Hey everyone, welcome to number 62 episode of the Unifying Force here on the Virtual Cantina Network. I'm Gio, joined by Dave. How are you doing, Dave?
Good morning/afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, slash whatever time it is, wherever you're taking this in, if now or a little bit later. Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about the big release of animation that happened about 9 months ago now, for May 4th, 2023, Visions Season 2 or Volume 2. They like to kind of go back and forth on their descriptions at Lucasfilm Animation with how they're describing it, but it's a time of year where there's a lot of animation coming out. We, of course, right now have The Bad Batch Season 3 dropping, and it's almost like animation is trending everywhere. So it seemed like a great time to go over the 9 chapters of Volume 2 of Visions. And
It's really kind of
have a nice chat.
an important time. It's as you know, we've talked about this on some other shows. It's award season, and Visions has won 2 of the Annie Awards. It was nominated, I think, a record-breaking time for like 5 or 6, and
Yeah,
won 2 of them. So this is a fun kind of show.
yeah, it's definitely hitting, I guess, the zeitgeist in a wider way than maybe perhaps people might have expected in the idea of having like an anthology series in Star Wars. And I think there's enough variety in it, and we'll get into talking about it. And we can also reflect on Volume 1, which we had a good conversation about when that dropped, of how it kind of widens the appeal maybe of Star Wars and can really be enjoyed by anyone. Doesn't require, the the widest scale and scope of an entire saga or a huge IP like Star Wars. They are in a shorter format, and so that allows them to be a little bit more digestible. And exactly as you're saying, award seasons now, and it's great to see that the effort and the drive to get Star Wars to be including as many different creators and storytellers as possible is being recognized on the kind of bigger stage.
That's what really struck me first off about this whole deal is I hadn't watched any of the trailers or the promos or anything going into this before I started watching it, and how different this is and how worldwide this version is. I was going in expecting me some Japanese anime. Okay, that's really what we got in season 1. But
Absolutely.
this is hugely, widely, worldwide. These are not just Japanese anime houses that are doing this. These are from Spain and Chile, Ireland, the UK, South Korea, France, India, Japan, and South Africa. I mean, just wow.
Yeah, it really is. It's a kind of celebration of a kind of globalism and the multicultural aspects that can really make storytelling so rich and varied. And I think, yeah, it's a fantastic idea to widen the birth of Star Wars animation from Volume 1, which had 7 Japanese anime studios, many of them traditional anime powerhouses, and telling nine chapters of story there. Whereas here we've got 9 individual animation studios from more or less 9 quite different and spread out parts of the world. and bringing their own kind of sensibilities, maybe,
Oh
and
yes.
some of the aesthetics from these different environs into animation.
Well, I mean they were really, some of them not so much, but some of them really obviously putting their culture into Star Wars and putting Star Wars into their culture is oh the I can't remember the names of all the episodes at this point, but the one that was done by the 88 Pictures, the Indian studio,
Yes.
is I mean that was very obviously a Star Wars story set in India. You know,
Mhm.
it was removed from a galaxy far, far away, or perhaps there is a very similar to India planet in a galaxy far, far away. But it, it worked the way they did it. And the last one, Aura's song, it's done by the South
Yeah.
African studio. Again, it was very much kind of telling a little bit of a South African story there.
Yeah. Yeah. You can
But yeah,
definitely
we're kind of talking about the
hear
end
that coming
now,
through.
beginning. We're going all the way to the end. So let's kind of go through the episodes and see what it is. And we'll start with episode 1, which is I guess episode, yeah, see two, episode
Yeah.
1.
Yeah. Chapter
Sith.
1, episode 1, Sith. Right. So this was animated by the studio called El Judy, which is a Madrid-based animation studio that is actually quite established with doing rendering services for other bigger animation studios, but hasn't. It's quite a nascent new studio itself.
Mm,
I found a nice interview on Variety with Rodrigo Blas, who's happened to write and direct this, and he's got a 20-year history of working in Pixar, brief stint
okay.
in ILM, and done blue sky animation as well. So he's had a lot of exposure to the different kinds of animation that you get in the mainstream Hollywood studios. But he was able to, I think, bring such a Spanish flavor to this episode, in the way it was impressionistic and visually kind of dazzling, had textures of brushstrokes. But yeah, so this was called Sith, and it told a story of a young lady who's looking quite desolate and in an abandoned outpost just with the company of her droid E2. And she's awoken on the day of an eclipse, which I think was an interesting cultural nod, because
Mm,
quite often we forget that it's not just the sun in which so many calendars around the world are based on. We've got the moon, you've got
yeah.
uh, astrology is important to some cultures, and I think it was a nice little change up. But yeah, it really became a story of somebody who had a dark past that was trying to carve themselves a new way into living. But can you escape that shadow from the previous trauma? That's the kind of question this episode Sith posed.
Well, see
And
this one being first, it's took me a long time to get into. Is I have not watched season 2 until recently. Is I would watch the first part of this episode several times, and it's just kind of begins. It doesn't come straight out of the box and grab you. And granted, I was watching this, late in the evenings, and I'd watch and I'd fall asleep, and I'd watch and I'd fall asleep, and I'd show up, but try it again and again. And it really does that. I think a lot of these episodes does is it starts presenting one thing, but then it totally switches you another way. I mean, this was like, oh, this is called Sith. We've got like this kind of force sensitive person creating art. And I mean, it's sensed by most of the background, but then boom, right here, it goes
yeah,
into it.
yeah, it was. I think it was a really experimental feel for an animation, and quite a brave choice to have this as the first one,
Hmm.
given how visually unique it is, and definitely unlike anything you've seen in Star Wars and from Lucasfilm Animation as a general. If you look at the Clone Wars, Bad Batch, Rebels, and Resistance. Even it's such a departure from familiar animation, and I think that's what it was going for. And I appreciate this more after I kind of looked into the background, as I've said, with the animation studio.
Right.
El Giri is Spanish for the tourist. So the idea behind that is they wanted to have this kind of uh, international experience and exposure to that kind of surrealism that is very famously coming from Spain. You know, the kind of Picasso, the Juan Miro kind of use of color and collage almost. And I think it to me, as the episode continued, I felt more comfortable in that. Initially, it was really arresting because there's just a lot of negative space. It's whites, and then it's like
Mhm.
huge paint strokes coming over, um, and you are kind of thinking, visually, this looks amazing, but what kind of Star Wars story are they going for? Because the title Sith sounds very black and white, and
Right.
um, but it's got this very artistic character. I guess trying to paint her way into a new and different livelihood away from the dark side.
Well, that was
Um,
the first thing that struck me is when all the splotches of color that we saw here that she's dealing with here, when she's trying to make those move around and she's doing it with the force.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh wow, and then they all turn black. Here's something.
yeah. Um, it was a good visual reveal, I thought. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of getting to get the aesthetic to match what you feel like the theme might be. And I also really like the animation of the droid. I thought that was
Mhm.
it kind of reminded me of a mixture of what we've seen some of the droid designs in Andor,
It
and in the
made a little
sequel
bit more
trilogy.
like a droidica kind of with the three-pointed movement, but then like
Yeah,
you've got a friendly BB-8 droidica.
yeah, exactly. A nice hybrid of droids, um, and then you've got the kind of imposing. I don't know whether I enjoyed how obvious it was that you had these kind of terrifying, kind of dark side images in the background when
Mm,
the character Lola's kind of walking, and it's kind of a graffitied explosion of color above her, and then this terrifying, imposing face, which you assume is the Sith coming in, um, here and there. Um, but I really enjoyed this one.
it
Once
was
I
my
was,
feeling on a lot of it. I think you've hit it, is that I wasn't sure if I was disliking it or liking it for a lot of this. It's like, okay, they're gonna hit you with, oh, she's going into a cave. Oh, that's an obvious Star Warsy metaphor. It was
Mhm.
a lot of, it's like, the cave. Remember the
Yeah,
cave.
then
It's
we've got a lot of that coming up as well
I
in the
know.
next chapter.
But
Um,
then like, boom bang, you hit yeah, and sit there and then you get kind of this, which is like all Blade Runnery. It
oh
gets
yeah, absolutely. And I think the visual and the auditory combination of seeing the Sith Master dragging his lightsaber through the ground and seeing the sparks fly was a really nice shot within the episode, and kind of just gets this imposing figure to feel like it's almost like the jaws of the shark coming up to catch its prey.
yeah.
um, and I think once the Sith characters emerged, you had a really nice contrast of lighting, a lot more, um, and use of shadow, and I think it really impressed
It
me.
makes her life more complicated, is you're seeing much
Mhm.
more of what's going on around, as opposed to the very simplistic, peaceful kind of artist life that you're seeing in the beginning.
Yeah,
I don't know that
exactly.
I agree with making the dark side part richer than your, life trying to get away from it, but it's
Yeah,
definitely there.
yeah, and um, Did the Lola character remind you of anyone in Star Wars previously? Or do you feel like she was like a stock character?
So I felt that we were getting something when I saw the character and she's first revealed. She felt kind of new for Star Wars, but not unfamiliar. I think I was getting a lot of Trinity from the Matrix vibes, that kind of
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, but as far as an established character in Star Wars, I don't think so. I don't think I had any deal. I mean, looking back at
Hmm.
it, could you say this once you've seen the entire thing, not in the reveal, but once you've seen the entire thing, could this be Ventress-esque? Perhaps.
Sure, that's
Um,
an interesting one. Yeah.
but no, and like, right here in this image, I'm just struck by seeing Jamie Gertz. But it's just that's just visually.
Oh, I do see that. Yeah. I think it actually reminded me of maybe what could have been with the character of Rey a little bit more.
Mhm. Okay.
Um, in that if we'd had this chance to see a, a Star Wars, female Jedi character have this dark past and have it impact how she identifies herself in the future and what her destiny might be ahead. It feels like I kind of felt some of those themes that I wish the sequel trilogy had been able to give us a
Yeah.
little bit more of, a bit of complexity to it, rather than just you're a clone of the biggest baddest villain they've ever had. A result of that, but this actually reminded me a little bit of Sabine Wren, because we know that she
Mm.
is the artistic superstar and precocious talent in that era of Star Wars
And in
in
a lot
Rebels
of
and then
ways
going
hiding
forward.
from her own past. So
Yeah,
it's a very
yeah,
that's a very insightful one that I hadn't thought of. I like that.
and yeah, I just thought it was still felt fresh as well. And I think maybe it's the being impressed with the visual style and just seeing the colors and the use of lighting. Um, and then, of course, she almost had her own Darth Maul moment, extending a
Yeah.
second blade
Yeah.
with a different color. Now, what do you feel about that? Because we've seen like lots of fan builds and fan lightsabers have two different colors on a saber staff or a double edge. Does
Well,
that
I
visual
I
work for
think
you?
that's okay. That's not the real reason behind Mace Windu's lightsaber. The real reason is Samuel L. Jackson wanted a purple lightsaber. But the in-universe explanation, this tells us a lot about it. Is okay. It's a combination of a red lightsaber and a blue lightsaber. You get a purple lightsaber because he's using that kind of dark side energy. That's kind of the same thing that you get here. It is that the Force is not as black and white as the Jedi lead you to believe in canon. It's
Mhm.
not do or do not. There is no try. Well, yeah, there's try. It's not this. It's not just the Sith only deal in absolutes. We've done shows on entire shows on this. It's like, well, that in itself is an absolute.
Mhm.
Is there's a lot of room for gray in the Star Wars universe, and we keep talking about gray Jedi and this. I think there's a lot more to the universe that we have yet to be seen explored, and that's the exact kind of thing that this Visions can do. Is I know this isn't
Right.
canon, I know this isn't necessarily in universe, but it's a really cool kind of place to throw things at the wall and see what sticks. And I think this story here, if you were to bring it into main canon, could completely work.
Yeah, it really could. It has enough of those kind of echoes of other character moments that we see to fit in, but also just thematically in the kind of changing of identity and wanting to have this reckoning with your destiny and maybe make something different of your future, no matter what the past was for you. And I think it was a nice touch also. You can see in these gallery images that the StarWars.com has a great feature on this. There's
Yeah,
just
that's where
a
we're
lot of
pulling
great
all of
stills.
this from, by the way. If everybody's like wondering, is all of these images, if you want to delve deeper into them and the little captions below them and what they're talking about, all of this is available on StarWars.com. Even kind of this, like the concept art and stuff behind it.
Yeah, it's sometimes really fun to see the evolution of design, or how similar it is from the initial sketch to what you see in 3D or 2D rendered animation. And there was a reference actually to the sword style lightsaber with the crossguard, but different to Kylo Ren. So genuinely just the hilt of a sword in the Sith Master that challenges our hero to be
I think
of
that
the
was in the
design of.
first one, and they were referencing that is the a medieval sword wielded by El Cid. So there's purposely making a Spanish sword be the at the forefront from this Spanish animation studio.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a nice touch. It's like an Easter egg almost to the historical side and cultural side of things, and I like that, and I appreciate them infusing even a shorter animation and feature style. I think this episode was 16 minutes or so.
I think it was. I think this one was 16 minutes.
Enough flourishes of what's familiar and what's new. So yeah, I think it was a really strong episode, and also did remind me a little bit of how Visions Volume 1 began, where we had the Ronin Jedi, who actually was a Sith who'd escaped his past and was confronted with another red lightsaber wielding opponent who wanted to kind of bring him back into the dark fold.
Yeah. So let's look at episode 2. This is Screecher's Reach.
That is right. Yeah. So this one is the Irish animation studio Cartoon Saloon, and they've got quite a reckoning of filmography behind them. They have this sort of.
Are these the same people that brought us? It was on Netflix a while ago. Is The Book of Kells?
Yes. The Secret of Kells?
It might be that. The Secret of Kells.
Yeah, so they have a kind of spiritual trilogy, The Secret of Kells, Song of the Sea, and I think Wolf Walkers is the third part. These are all big budget independent animation features, so feature-length films, and they harken back to genuine Irish folklore to tell these stories, these kind of coming-of-age stories, and in a way that's very much what we see here with this second episode. We've got a sort of uncertain character hero. It starts off with that quite disturbing shot of all these characters asleep in this gigantic kind of factory of workers, and then kind of spans to this group of children who are maybe a little bit bored, maybe looking to do something more fun with their free time. It was giving a kind of the Goonies kind of Stand By Me, almost Stranger Things type feel to it. I felt.
See, that's one of the other things that was hard for me to get into that episode as well. Is it? I'm like, where's the Star Wars? Where's the Star Wars?
But in a way, I liked that. I thought that's. While I felt also, I agree with you, it's hard to kind of get into because we're going in this with our Star Wars sunglasses on. We want the galaxy far, far away lenses, but that's what Visions can do, as you're saying, because it's non-canon. This can go weird and wonderful in any kind of way and direction.
Well, and that was nice to see too. Before I knew how global this season was supposed to be, I was in a space where I was kind of like it just the hate fan on it, because I'm like, what? What is this? Listen to all these like British voices in this. Or is this a Japanese animation studio that's sitting there and just hiring out British voices? We want to hear the Japanese voices in your animation. And then you go do research. And I'm like, oh, well, that was stupid of me, wasn't it? Fun in light to sit there and judge. I'm judging a Japanese animation studio. That's not a Japanese animation studio.
Just on that, do you prefer, if you were watching an anime aside from Star Wars, to be dubbed with the English dub, the American actors voicing over, or would you prefer to hear it in its original language and then just go with the subtitles? Because it's a thing people go back and forth on a lot.
Tough thing about anime, and I prefer like my options for both. I understand that it gives you a much broader reach if there's a dub, but I like to be able to see and hear the original as well. So I kind of like having that both ways.
Sure. I agree. I think it's great.
And that's kind of some of the cool things of season one. Is season one was kind of a mixture of that.
Yeah. And it had kind of a more traditional anime setting, I guess, because they used 7 studios that were all Japan-based. So they had a more similar sensibility between the episodes. Yes. Whereas with these ones, I really felt, as you've been saying, it's the diversity of influence and storytelling really came about. So this one, Screech's Reach, we had a motley crew of friends, and there is a dark cave around.
And you see right here on StarWars.com, it's obviously inspired by the cave sequence in Empire.
That's right. And there's a there's a cave to be challenging our hero, our protagonist, with some kind of character-related flaw to overcome, or maybe a truth to be confronted. And you see that here with the idea, and this, I guess, some of the Irish folklore coming in, the cause of the screeching, very, very much in sound, and then with the visuals, seem to be this kind of banshee type character.
Well, and you see, once I got past the first part of what this is into Japanese animation studio, it's like, wait, this is like the Secret of Kells. This is that same. They kept true to. They have a style, is what I'm saying. It's just there.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So we have this this supposed ghost inside these walls, and this main character Dahl has a pendant around her neck, this kind of magical necklace that seems to be informing her or inspiring her, and that she references at moments of uncertainty. It's almost like an amulet that we've got a whole host of fantasy, historical fantasy involving amulets and charmed objects, and it's a big part of that kind of Gaelic folklore as well, that you can infuse magic into a kind of inanimate object, and then it can give someone direction or do something more negative, maybe exact a kind of curse on them, make them compelled to do something. And I was also reminded of how much the Harry Potter universe borrowed that from Gaelic folklore as well, with the Deathly Hallows and things like that. And this did give me that sort of feeling of it could have been set in one of those worlds as well. It could have been a story in Middle Earth. It could have been a story in or around Hogwarts in a way. But
it was that kind of classic hit that it starts out with the fun and the kids and the this and the that, and then it breaks down to the more serious later on as you go.
Yeah. And so yeah, Dahl confronts this character, this ghost, this elderly woman kind of hiding in this decrepit way, who's been letting out some of the most awful sounds you'll hear in animation. I mean, however they created those voice actions, give that lady a raise for screaming in that way. That was I was almost looking at my shoulder thinking, I need more lights on when I'm watching this. What's going on? um, and I didn't expect that from an animation, especially when, again, with you, I was there at the beginning thinking, okay, so we've got this factory, we've got these kids going on some kind of adventure. It seems very stereotypical. Is it really going to do something different for me? Yikes! And this feel cold now. What's going on?
Exactly.
But I was, yeah. So it really brought me in, I guess, halfway into the episode, and then when you've got this young character Dahl confronting the kind of monster within, and you see it's actually this, just very frail looking character hiding in a corner that Dahl just very quickly wipes out with a bit of a boulder pull. It was
Mhm.
shocking, and um, and then you think, okay, well, maybe this red glowing necklace that's been guiding her is a little more unseemly and a little more nefarious than we
Well, see,
expect.
that was my thing when I'm seeing this. I'm like, okay, the boulder, fine, that was accidental. It was okay, she didn't. She's just trapped there. But then, holy crap, what she just does is just like, oh, red lights are.
Yeah.
You can almost hear Palpatine going, "Do it."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cackling in the background. Yeah, it's just ruthless, cold, ruthless, shocking. Maybe some people kind of thought that sort of thing was coming up ahead anyway. And then she escapes, and it turns out there's this Sith mother who's been calling to her and instructing her through this amulet around her neck.
Well, see,
And
now this is where I got really mixed up. Like she had used the red lightsaber, she'd killed her, but how white and pristine and literally coming out of the light this character is, but it's a Sith mother.
yeah, it's and yeah, really interesting visual design again, very kind of angular, that kind of shocking scarlet, the reds, and then it's almost a case of you think, well, of course, there's this darkness within Dahl, this character. There's been something amiss since the beginning. She's been
Yeah,
completely blindly following this amulet, and maybe it's a cautionary tale of, you know, ask questions. Don't just follow blindly when someone or something is telling you a certain thing. And unfortunately, Dahl does that and has this kind of almost cultish influence drawing her to the mother through this necklace. She's completely beholden to it, and that's it really.
yeah.
The turn happens. She sees her friends. She's very quick in deciding.
And like I said, the entire time I think until I don't think that I got that this was a Sith mother until I looked at these slides on StarWars.com. I really think that I was under the impression, she did what she had to do. She's going to be a Jedi, right?
Mm.
It's like, oh, she's getting on the ship with the light side person and the thing. It's like, they're telling a much darker tale here.
Yeah, they are. They are. And it's kind of a side of a story that you don't see in the mainstream Star Wars canon and in the saga generally. So it was an interesting change up to see that it was the Sith being the welcoming. Oh, we'll come follow us, and we'll give you a wider story and all this bigger
Yeah.
scale and make something of your future. Um, but of course, she started off in this kind of aggressively, almost exploitative looking workhouse at the start. So I guess any kind of haunted cave or freakish spaceship with an offer of a different future would be
Yeah, here we go.
enticing for a
There
kid.
we're finally that's what I was trying to get to. There's your factory concept art.
Yeah, it's yeah, very industrialized and kind of making you think of maybe there's like Victorian times, with the chimney sweeps and getting kids into the coal mines to just do the dirtiest work because it's the cheapest thing anyone can find, and that's kind of the feeling it started out this second episode.
Yeah.
So are we really surprised Dahl jumped into the arms of the Sith? Maybe on
No,
reflection, not.
not really particularly out of that. So let's see. What is our next episode? Is it In the Stars? Is that next for us?
Yes, it is. In the
And
Stars.
let me just remind you, as I know we have viewers in the room, we're live for a change. You and I are here, the best time for us to do it. So if you've got stuff to say in the comments, is go ahead and let us know what you're thinking about these episodes. So I think it was Screecher's Reach was actually one of the ones that won an Annie Award. It was many were nominated, but I'm trying to see what it was that it won it for. Probably Best Direction TV
Direction.
Media.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a good one there. But yeah, let's talk about. Okay, this one had me for a while. Is I was like, is this digital 3D modeling, or is it?
Yeah, I thought it was intriguing and very compelling visually in the way the characters look, the environment, the lighting. It's looking very tactile and as if there's a physicality to these characters, the way they move around.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's In the Stars.
But
It's
then
by
we'll toss it
Chilean.
right to the concept art here. Is like, wow.
Yeah, really stunning. That's all I have to say. Really, it's um, just a really great use of 2D and 3D. I feel it'd be fascinating to have more information behind the direction and the art direction here. So this was the Chilean studio called Punk
Mm-hmm.
Robot, and again they're smaller scale studio, and it's great to see that Lucasfilm embraced them and gave them this opportunity to tell a story which had classic Star Wars themes, but also a kind of ecological primary focus, which I think is always an interesting story to tell in different media, and definitely has a place in the galaxy far, far away.
Yes,
So
this was Star Wars version of Fern Gully. Fern Gully. You're probably not old enough to remember Fern Gully.
is it an ecological story?
It is. You go look that up. I think it's Don Bluth. I believe is what that was.
Oh, I love his animation. Okay. Definitely look into that. But yeah, so here we have two sisters. The younger, scrappy, kind of passionate one, and the elder, more responsible. Oh, don't do this. You got to follow this way, kind of thing. And I guess it's a relationship that anyone who is the younger of siblings or has a kind of elder family or friend figure in that capacity can relate to, the kind of push and pull in that relationship. And I felt these characters were very, very human, very real, and very earthly, if that makes sense.
Oh yes.
You can imagine this could have been a story, maybe with like an indigenous community in like the south of the Andes, and then you've got the kind of colonization happening and the transformation of the earth from something that was arable and agricultural and very much in a healthy state and balance with its natural state, with farmable land and plentiful water supplies, to something that's been completely poisoned, toxified, led to ruin by over farming, heavy industrialization, that sort of exploitation of the earth.
Course, the exploitation has to be by the Empire in this case.
So that's where I started to think, okay, maybe this is a little too on the nose. It could have been a little more subtle in its storytelling, but there's only a limited time in which they have to tell these stories. So I guess, it's a little harder to have discretion and subtlety in a shorter format, especially as you do have to bring it under the Star Wars umbrella. And I feel
And
this.
I'm going to correct myself. I looked it up. Fern Gully is not Don Bluth. It is directed by Bill Croyer, who
Okay.
was someone who helped with the original visual effects on Tron. So, but it is commonly mistaken as Don Bluth because the style of animation is very similar.
Good to know. Okay.
But
So
yeah,
this was.
but this one is looking at me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is I thought the entire time we're looking at a lovely image here of one of the main characters. I thought this was 3D animated, just the way it was looked, and I thought it was 3D animated in kind of a slowed down frame rate to make it look like it was claymation. I think
Yeah.
I think I saw some stuff in a featurette after the fact that this is claymation.
Yeah. It looks incredible. I think the detail of the textures and the consistency they have, and the way it fits into the broader landscape when you're seeing things. I think this one had a lot of really stunning vistas and shots, whether it's, and also I also love it when in any kind of storytelling you've got a kind of left field version of a story within a story told
Yeah.
through 2D
The
animation.
backstory told with the 2D kind of thing going on the rock.
Yeah, that was stunning, and really good to have that contrast in style, because it's kind of giving you that feeling of this is a tale as old as time, or this is a story from the past, and then you contrast it with the claymation and the 3D environments that go back to the main story, and it makes you appreciate both a lot more, I find, in general
And
terms.
I personally think that this is almost done better. It's a similar concept, but I think this was done better. This is the way they kind of told some of the backstory in Disney's Moana, is they would tell like part of the story through Maui's tattoos and that sort of thing in the 2D. And I think this was done better. I think that that was done for a little bit for comedic purposes, but this was a meaningful kind of way.
Yeah, this was hard hitting, and it really did, give you that emotional punch that you want sometimes from the best stories, and the kind of escapist fantasy that we have. It brings it back to that human level, as I was saying, and it also reminded me of the use of animation in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, where Hermione Granger is narrating this story about these 3 legendary items, and it's told through 2D still animation. And it's such a great way to break up the story and to make it a memorable tale within a tale. And this one did it really well. And yeah, it also has that kind of echo of other Star Wars stories, ruminating on the past, the kind of beloved parental figure that has been lost but isn't really gone. It's evoked through memory and emotion, and
so many
inspired.
serious moments versus bits of comedy, like we're seeing in this still here. It's like, yeah, I told you.
Yeah, it still had that kind of childlike exuberance and giddy feeling of what you kind of assume most animation does. And definitely, I think when people look at animation in a very naive way, they think, oh, it's just cartoons, it's just for kids, it's just, it's going to be slapstick humor and nothing more. But you can get a great balance of them, and this blended those different tones very well.
Yeah, it's stunning visuals. I loved all of this, and of course, the main crux of it, which again, it's a cartoon. It's presumably largely for children. It was a little bit obvious. Okay, they're going to save the day by using the Force.
Of course, did you expect any different? And in the same way, in the manner in which they remember their mother trying to do as well. So it's that kind of harkening back to the past, and let's use the lessons we were taught before and change things for the better. and have that big kind of Hollywood force moment.
Right.
I like to think of it as.
But,
But I'd like
but
to see what the studio does in other formats as well.
yeah, is I think absolutely. So let's move it on and check it out. this this was the turning point in what was going on here. This was the turning point in me watching the series, because when I watched it, it took forever to get started. I watched a bit of the first episode, a bit of the second episode, and then when I really finally got into it, then I digested the entire thing. But this episode was the turning point. Is I am your mother.
Yeah. What turned it around for you here?
Well, this is where it hit me over the head that this is not a bunch of Japanese studios doing. It's like, that's
4
freaking
episodes in.
Wallace and Gromit. I know
Yeah.
that's Wallace and Gromit. Wait, here now we go back and we have to start researching and looking at everything, and it's like, oh,
Yeah. Shaun the Sheep, Chicken Run, Morph,
exactly.
Wallace and Gromit. Yeah. Aardman Studios. So
Yes.
a real favorite for anyone who likes the traditional style of animation. Claymation, wow, it's a painstaking process to even create one scene, to even get a single frame ready for shot, and to imagine that the traditional style is you've got 24 different little poses within a single second that you've got to create out of sculpted clay material, and then shoot and then tell a story. I think it must be one of the most labor intensive but rewarding ways to tell a story.
Yeah, is one of my favorite things from this creator, but before this was an entire studio, is he went out, I forget what it's called at the moment, but he went out and he recorded people around Britain, presumably I think London, talking about living in these cramped and confined quarters, talking about their living situations.
Hmm.
And it just little hand recorder thing, just not telling them what it's living about. And then he animated it as if those people speaking were animals living in a zoo, where all of the things talking about, like he found this person that was living in London or England, that's traditionally from Brazil, and he's talking about we eat. It has the accent is we eat meat. We're carnivores. And then he animates this guy as like a lion, but like a little skinny lion talking about how they're fed, and we just get the meat, and it's not. Or this lady talking about it being cramped, and so she's some sort of I think maybe a possum or something living in just this little box, and with all these little children coming out of the babies coming out of it. It's a Creature Comforts is what it was
Creature
called.
Comforts.
Creature Comforts.
Yeah, that's it's so inventive. Yeah, that was, I think, so the pretty much the founder and pioneer of this style for Aardman, Nick Park. One of his early features, and that led to him being inspired to create slightly more human, as well as anthropomorphized animals with Wallace and Gromit, and then Shaun the Sheep and Chicken Run later on. And yeah, he's been renowned for years and years, since like the 1980, I think, was the first Aardman Studio project. And yeah, he's got if you like the look of this, and you haven't come across Wallace and Gromit,
Yes.
First of all, how could you not? But if you haven't, then you've got a lot of feature length and animated shorts
Is it
to enjoy.
The one with the robotic pants?
The Wrong Trousers.
Yes, The Wrong Trousers.
Yeah. What a classic! Yeah. Did you come across Creature Comforts recently, or is this something?
Oh no, I have remembered Creature Comforts from the days. I studied animation in college. And that was one of the favorite things that we did, and I attempted to emulate in a 2-day
Oh,
thing is
wow.
I went out and interviewed my younger brother, who was a kindergarten student at the time. So I
Okay.
went out and I got this audio of him telling this little story, and then I came back and then did it. I did it with video. I did it with
Okay.
him video of it, and then so I had video of him telling some of it and doing it, and I went ahead and frame by frame went into the video and kind of rotoscoped it and made this sketch 2D story, but with that audio that really didn't have anything to do with what was going on. So
Oh,
while that
awesome.
is very influential, so I remember Creature Comforts from forever, and then when you've seen Creature Comforts, then you delve into more of the Nick Park stuff, and you watch the joy that is Wallace and Gromit and everything
Yeah,
beyond.
that's fantastic. Yeah. So a huge inspiration to you. That's awesome to hear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's how, like I said, this was the turning point. Is this I
right.
recognize? I'm like,
Yeah.
yo,
Sparked your imagination.
boom,
Yeah, that doesn't look like it was just from a Toho Studios in Japan. It looks like something else.
yeah. Let's see where we
So
got.
yeah, the story with this one, we had a young budding pilot called Annie. Does that sound familiar? But a different spin
But
on it.
who is a Twi'lek that looks surprisingly like Harrison Dula?
Yeah,
Maybe not surprisingly like Harrison Dula.
definitely evoking that feel. And yeah, so this one was, I think, a little bit longer than parts 2 and 3 leading up, and they had a lot more, I think, dialogue in this one than in the previous chapters of Visions, because you just had a lot more character interaction to tell. And yeah, so what jumped out most to you about this episode? Do you have a favorite moment, or were you just kind of
Well, I mean, it's
blown away by Oddman again?
I enjoyed that it was this studio's take on classic Star Wars tropes,
Mm.
but a classic kid's story about being embarrassed of their parent, embarrassed of their situation, and let's put that into Star Wars. It was like, what would have happened if Anakin Skywalker had been embarrassed of being a slave in the pod race, and what if Shmi should have been in there with him? Would he have done it? It is a lot of that kind of thing. Is I thought it was a very nice mix of a classic story of things that happen in real life childhood. You're mixing in these kind of crazy little droids, and you're telling an enjoyable, if not predictable, type of story.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes you don't need to be stunned or surprised or have to be, hit with a change of tone or a plot twist. Sometimes it's just nice to sit in a world and just be absorbed by it. And this is so visually distinctive, so colorful, and so passionate. You feel like all the characters, they're really, they're very much like acting up to their stock roles, and it's just a nice little world to be involved in for a time. And I think it shows that Star Wars doesn't have to be dark and light, doom and gloom,
No.
empire and rebellion. There's
And then
so
you
many
bring things in.
stories.
You've got the Wallace and Gromit standard version of Wedge Antilles. It's like, oh,
That yeah, that was a sight. A sight and a sound. Wedge has never looked or sounded this way before.
exactly.
Yeah, it was interesting to have such a canon character. And if you're a long-time Star Wars fan, it's one of the first characters you come across. And outside of our main three heroes in the original trilogy, and it's great to see this different side to him.
Well,
The
and
Wallace side to
it's a
Wedge.
funny thing was Wedge not voiced by, I don't think he was voiced by Dennis Lawson in the original. I don't know. That might be a little bit of trivia that I might be remembering incorrectly. But, you've got Dennis Lawson in to this animation, this slapstick crazy.
Yeah, it's a it feels like a play out of left field, which is kind of weird to say and wacky to say, given that this is a Star Wars project. But because it looked and felt so different, when you see Wedge, it's kind of like, oh, we're in the galaxy far, far away. Okay, we really are. And then these cadets are, they're going to be part of something bigger. But let's not get distracted by the whole grand Star War. Let's stay here and now with this very everyday kind of neighborhood story of a young girl. She wants to get out there and prove herself, but can mom be a little more aware of my feelings, a little less in people's faces? Don't make me cringe. That kind of character, and you have her contrasted with the very imperial sounding rival
Yeah.
cadet. uh, she looked like, and her mother, well, they look, one looked like a clone of the other, but they could have walked out of season 1 of Rebels easily.
Well, and the Easter eggs in this is, like you said, you've got Dennis Lawson, you've got the market. There was, in that last photo, I think there's hanging in her bedroom as a T-16 Skyhopper.
Yeah, really nice little Easter eggs, nuggets, reminders of what universe we're in, even when it looks and sounds so different.
Yeah, it's really this one, like I said, is I am biased toward this studio and these creators, but this is hilarious and just
Yeah.
a really fun kind of in the middle of the deal. And was this the one? Was this the oh, who was the voice of the mother in this?
I couldn't pick it out. It wasn't a voice I was familiar with. I do know that we had some big female voice leads in earlier episodes. So in the first one, we in Sith, the Spanish Sith apprentice was Ursula Corbero, who was a huge star of Netflix's Money Heist. And we had Angelica Houston as the Sith mother taking Dahl away in Screech's Reach.
Yeah.
But this one,
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't someone that was, but it just seemed. It seemed like someone we've seen. It was almost like that distinctive voice that you get from the character in the Edna Mode from The Incredibles, but maybe that's just a haircut.
yeah, no, I see what you mean there.
But yeah,
no capes. No capes.
No capes. Yeah,
you don't want to see a cape caught in a pod racer.
But yeah, I love this one. That was hilarious.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I really love the look of the Wookiees here as well. They look so
yeah.
tactile and like you had so much design into them. The clay, you can just imagine how much fun / how laborious it would have been to create a Wookiee in claymation. But it really stood out to me.
Now here we go. For your next episode, Journey to the Dark Head. Okay, this was the inexplicable, like, mess with your head out there traditional anime that I was looking for from the beginning. And I agree now that I have seen them all, that it was best to not have put this at the very beginning, because that would have just made me go absolutely riot when you saw some of the other stuff coming after it. If this is the like space battleship Yamato, Akira, just this is what it is right there. And this isn't even from the Japanese studio, is it? This is from
it's South Korean, yeah. Studio Mir. And yeah, but definitely has that classic Japanese anime feel. Yeah, this definitely felt like it could have been part 10 or volume 1 of Visions. In the classic tropes, good and bad, the turn of the tide of war, a young kind of the young focused character versus the I want to do it my way kind of character clash. Um, it it reminded me of there was a really hyper episode of Visions in the first volume, The Twins. Do you remember that one
Oh
where
yeah.
it went full blown
I
Dragon
mean
Ball
that
Z
the
shonen anime?
twins went completely like Yu-Gi-Oh! Big
Yeah,
spiky hair.
it went off the cliff and into the anime abyss. Yeah. Um, this one was uh, it was more grounded than that, but yeah, it could have fitted into any of the kind of classic anime powerhouse studios. It really did look amazingly drawn, and the cells were so vibrant and full of color. I think it started off more interesting, and then it kind of went away from what would have been something intriguing. So
I
this is the
I
one
I
where
I agree. I think a
you
lot
got
of the other ones started the opposite way, where I was bored with them at the beginning,
right,
and
yeah,
then so it's a weird change kind of in the middle. The first couple of episodes, I was completely bored with them in the beginning, and then the end got really good. And
mm.
this one, the beginning, I was like, "Heck yeah, classic anime, let's go." Oh, come on.
Yeah. Um, I mean, they had fantastic characters. They
Oh,
had
absolutely.
cool visual designs. I think it's because it started off in this more ambiguous way. You have this kind of monk setup with this almost kind of weathertop little construction of stone, and you have this young character wondering, what is to come next, and what is this balance. You had a character that looked like could have been a religious figure, maybe even a riff on the father from Mortis.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, this could be very different from the normal binary light and dark, Jedi and Sith. Let's see what's going on here. But I guess as soon as they had the time jump to later on in the war, it became very generic Star Wars, which is okay, especially as in the series of Visions, we hadn't come across one of those storylines as ostensibly yet.
Right.
So it didn't feel like I did in Visions Volume 1, where anytime you had a Jedi versus Sith face off, it felt very repetitive of what we'd seen before, even if it was drawn or animated very differently. Um, but yeah, I just still had some highlight moments. It had a fantastically animated duel,
Yeah.
some of the best just classic lightsaber action that you can get anywhere. It was um, incredible use of kind of lighting and the classic looks of Star Wars, the sadistic kind of dark warrior trying to, um, you know, just bring more
And there's
innocent characters into the fold.
like the background work in this is very very traditional Star Wars, and you saw in the previous one here, it's like, okay, yeah, it's very Star Wars architecture in the background. Here we've got kind of the take on the lower levels of Coruscant, and it's visually beautiful. It was just, and it was the classic anime that I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe by this point in the series, I was looking for something else. Maybe I was like looking for, oh, I like these different takes. It's like, oh, let's give me the crazy, give me the out there.
Mm, yeah, I do know what you mean. I think one part that was also very distinctive is the kind of prophecy she saw on the stone early on,
Hmm.
and the way that moved about on screen and then was realized years later. I think was a nice use of um, the time jump, which initially I was skeptical of because it seemed like we'd gone from this more neutral, abstract group of characters that were talking about destiny and the Force and great things, but weren't, Jedi or Sith, to then go down the classic route. But yeah, I think this was clearly a labor of love for classic Star Wars in all its eras, and I think there's the use of those statues and the color change in them, I think, looked very distinctive, and almost reminds me of what could lie in the future in live action Star Wars with what we've seen in the Ahsoka series. And
you hit me exactly where I was thinking. This giant head here, I'm like, I know it takes years for them to create something like this, and this has been out for a while, but I was like, oh, was the Ahsoka storyline leaked to these guys before they created this? Like,
perhaps
this is awful, like on the nose kind of. That's how we're feeling about it, and especially the way the Mandoverse Disney Plus series has come on with the helmets highlighted in the blue and the red. Is that was really kind of what that was feeling for me, but I don't know. I still enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I should have, based on what I wanted going in. But after we had just had that classic run through claymation and the pod racing, it was just kind of,
yeah, it was like a familiar step back into Star Wars territory from something really out there that we'd seen before. But I like the animation style. I felt it was a nice blend of the kind of, it seems kind of weird to say, but the kind of Hollywood Western version of anime, because the studio has people who worked on The Legend of Korra and The Last Airbender universe, and some people from the original Avatar, The Last
Airbender. It's got to be
series.
people that Filoni knows.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so that leads you to believe that there could have been a leak of that Ahsoka, or at least the correlation is that they knew kind of a through line or something that was going.
Yeah, it's it kind of could have been one of those Nickelodeon after school episodes of a really cool cartoon. Let's not discredit that at all. It looks great. It has classic moments, but it feels like a comfortable, familiar step in Star Wars rather than a big departure, which is what you could do with Visions in every single
and that's
episode.
what the entire rest of this season really was.
Yeah.
So we are already over our hour, and we are halfway through the season. So I'm going to call an audible right here. We talked about doing the entire season for this, but I think the way we're discussing and getting into it is we're going to have to call a part 2. We'll do a future episode. Maybe Kat will be able to join us at that point too, and we'll talk about the remaining 4 episodes, one of which is the last one, which is one of the Annie Award winners. So we'll get to that another time. But
Yeah.
as you can see, there's a lot to digest and delve into. And if you haven't watched Visions and you're watching this, oops, sorry, spoiler alert. But it's been around for a while, people. We gave you a little bit of notice.
Yeah.
But you should go out and check it, because it's really, really cool. And every different episode will surprise you in some manner, I guarantee. None of it is just completely predictable, but some of it is way beyond anything that you would ever predict. But so thank everybody for joining us that you've seen in our first episode that we've been doing live in, I don't know how long it's been. But
It's been a minute. Yeah.
yeah, it's been a bit, but we'll see what the future brings, whether we'll come to you live with this or not. But we will get you the second half of Star Wars Visions Volume 2.
Yeah. It is award season. This is award winning. It is animation season 2. And this is some of the most imaginative storytelling you've got in Star Wars. So definitely check it out and let us know your favorites, anything that you'd love to see in Star Wars. This series really shows Lucasfilm's world is an oyster, right? There's so many ways that you can go and tell great stories. So keep up that good
And if you're
storytelling.
watching this, if you didn't watch this live, if you're watching this on demand, so to speak, is shoot us an email right there, vcunifyingforce@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know what you think of the second half of the season that we could include in that episode. And just let us know any questions you have for us here on the Unifying Force. And until then, until next time, I guess, may the Force be with you.
Thank you, guys. May the Force be with you all.